to Swindon for our second meeting of the municipal year. I'm Councillor June Valley, I'm the chairman of the panel, and I'd like to welcome everybody to an earlier meeting than our normal 10:30 due to we have to vacate the room by 1 o'clock. That's why we've got another extra agenda to go through. Right, so in case of any emergencies, well, we haven't got any planned fire drills, so if there is event of fire, you go out to the fire exits and to the nearest car park. Please note this meeting is being recorded and broadcast live via YouTube. The broadcast will be out when the meeting enters the part 2 session towards the end of the meeting. Agenda 1, apologies of absence. To receive any apologies of absence. Matt?
Yes, Chairman. So we've got apologies from Councillor Sven Hocking, who's been substituted by Councillor Christopher Williams. Councillor James Shepherd has also sent apologies, as has Denise Rowan. Louise Williams is just given it.
Could I also offer the apologies of the Chief Executive of my office, Margie Darwis, who is his flight back from Dublin has been delayed.
Thank you, Commissioner. Agenda 2, minutes of the previous meetings. To confirm the minutes of the meeting held on 26th of June 2025 as a true and correct record. Any comments? Proposer? Vijay and seconder? Alan, thank you. Any objections? Thank you very much. Declaration of interest. To receive any declaration of disclosable interest or dispensation granted by the Standards Committee. Do any members of the panel have any interest to declare? Thank you. Then the 4, Chairman's announcement. There is one announcement. The government's draft English devolution bill has outlined plans to revert PCC elections, the supplementary vote system. It has also given an indication about the circumstance under which a mayor may be eligible to take on the responsibilities currently carried out by the PCC. Authority area aligns with 1 or 2 police forces areas. Powers are due to be transferred to mayors in Norfolk, Suffolk and Essex in April 2027. Public participation. The panel welcomes a contribution from members of the public. Matt, has there been any public participation?
No, Chairman.
Agenda 6, Police and Crime Panel highlights and performance reports. To receive the highlight and performance report. PCC to introduce the report.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chairman. There are 2 reports that you will be receiving through this panel, and I hope you've had time to read both. But of course, today we are joined by the Chief Constable, and while it is your job, Chair and the panel, to hold me to account for the delivery of an efficient and effective police force, it is of course my job to hold the Chief Constable to account on your behalf. So we are blessed that we have the Chief Constable with us today. So if you are happy, Chair, I will give a broad overview of the first quarterly report now, and then leave the Chief to go into more detail. And then with my second presentation later, I will focus more on the future than on the previous year, because you will have heard about that firstly from me and from the Chief Constable. Firstly, I would like to thank the Chief Constable for the performance of Wiltshire Police Force. Not only are positive outcomes, are further action taken, our prosecution, arrest rates, all generally up across the board, but as a consequence of that, crime is generally down across the board, across all types in the county. And some of the statistics are really quite astounding. But when you put all those together, those statistics which are in the report, we are now the safest county in the country by some measure. We have 53 crimes per 1,000 members of our population. The national average is 87. So we've had discussions in the past whereby it was our job to make Wiltshire safer. And I think thanks to the leadership and drive of Chief Constable Catherine Roper, we are doing that. But what is also noticeable now, and which was made clear to me by the ONS stats that came out 3 weeks ago, which stated that 58%, this was after a broad survey by the Office of National Statistics, 58% of the residents of Wiltshire feel that Wiltshire Police Force is doing a good or excellent job. Now, that also tells the Chief and I that 42%, if 58% say we're doing good or better job, 42% still tell us we've got work to do. Well, we know that, and that is why the Chief is continuing to drive performance. But looking at those statistics, we are now the third most trusted police force in the country. So not only are the Chief Constable Wiltshire Police Force making Wiltshire safer, but our residents are starting to feel safer, which is really positive. On the other side of that, of course, it is, if I reflect on when I first took the job 4 years ago, and I was frequently told at area board meetings, parish council meetings, and just talking to Joe Public, there's no point reporting crime to the police, they won't do anything about it. I am no longer hearing that when I attend area boards, parish councils, and that is due to the much improved community engagement performance due to our community neighbourhood teams who attend now all area boards. I've done 2 this week. And as always, the neighbourhood team, police team inspector turns up, and we have a much better social media platform that allows you to ask questions of the police force and directly to the MBT. So that is all broadly positive. We are making Wiltshire safer, and our residents are starting to feel safer. There is still a long way to go, however, but I will pause there and take any specific questions that you have from having read the first report, and the Chief and I will try and answer the broad questions, but please, the Chief is going to talk after me about some more specific issues. And you can also then, of course, ask her, and then I will talk about the future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Members, do you have any questions, please? Councillor Wilson, start with.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Commissioner, for your introduction to your PEG. Just a couple of questions. So I read through the PEG, and I was really pleased to hear about your plans to extend support of the children who witness domestic abuse. So I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about your plans. So that's the first question. The second is in relation to the funding for the victims, because I could read that the grant was reduced by 4.2%. So if you could tell us a little bit more about how you have managed the grant reduction and what is the impact, that would be much appreciated.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. For those who don't know, there was a Radio 4 was in Swindon yesterday making a programme about young people within the criminal justice sector, and that is because of the improvements that Wiltshire Police Force have made, and how we collectively, that's not just Wiltshire Police Force or the Office of the Post PCC, but how Swindon Borough Council and of course Swindon's outstanding YJS team have improved the support that we give young people. So the answer to your question is it's very much a partnership response that we have in terms of managing young people and children who are likely to become victims and therefore engaged into the criminal justice sector. And from a policing perspective, and the chief will be able to give the details, of course, what she has now driven is, rather than putting young people into the criminal justice sector directly, we work through out-of-court resolutions, whereby we work in partnership with youth justice services to try and give alternate activities for young people rather than sullying their lives perhaps forever by sending them to some form of offenders institute. But also, of course, we are all engaged very broadly in a whole raft of activities through the police's neighbourhood harm reduction team, whereby we engage in junior schools through Junior Good Citizens, which is very much educational. Then as they go through their schooling system, we've got a series of other initiatives. We've got Blunt Truth, which is a joint project that we have with National Health England, whereby we go into schools. We've now visited over 30 schools, and we give them a pretty shocking video in terms of the harm that's caused to them and the victim of crime. There is a whole raft, which is, a lot of it is funded from the serious violence duty that was started by the last government, fortunately rolled over by this one, which I, and under legislation, I've become the convener, or the PCC is the convener, which I have. The authority is almost the wrong word, because it sounds dictatorial, but I have the responsibility to try and coordinate a more comprehensive young school with young people. And I mentioned schools, of course, I worry about the EOTAS schools where young people are excluded from mainstream education. And you know why? Probably because their reference at home is going to be drug abuse, domestic abuse, but it's really tough. So I think we are putting together a pretty comprehensive package with the councils, with the other emergency services. And I hope that the success that we've had will be showcased on a Radio 4 programme, which was recorded yesterday. Jim Robbins and I both said our piece. I think it's the 30th of September. Your second question was budgets. As you know, our budget is effectively made up of two halves. One is from the national grant, central grant, and the other one is the precept. Well, under the national grant, we received £127 per head of population. The national average is 164. I know the Metropolitan Police Force is a different force altogether. They receive over £400 per head of population in London. We, therefore, are the third lowest funded force by the national grant, which that's half of our budget. Our other budget, half of the budget, of course, comes from the council tax, and for historical reasons, we receive £287 per Bandy household. Dorset received 305, Gloucester, our most similar rural counties, 307. When I total all of that up, we receive less money per head of population than probably any other county police force area in the country. The fact that with less money, we are doing more and we are the safest county is to the huge credit of the work of Wiltshire Police Force, led by Chief Constable Catherine Roper. I made many of those points at the last meeting, and I will talk about future options that we will have in my second presentation, but I hope that's a long answer to two very complex questions.
I think your first answer was great. It's just that the second one, what I was really interested just to understand it's the victim of domestic abuse support grant, which was reduced by 4.2%, because obviously it's a cut. So you outlined, like all the financial issues which we're going to discuss as a part of the agenda. It's just that kind of like a grant because there was already cuts.
Yeah, that comes from. No, thank you, Steve. That grant specifically comes from the Ministry of Justice, and I don't believe it's being rolled on again next year. Najee? Welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner, and apologies, Pal, for not being there in person today. Yes, so the victim grant is from a specific grant, as the PC said, from the Ministry of Justice. It was reduced by 4.2%, which is about £36,000. Overall, that grant is used to contribute to our victim support services, which the bulk of that grant goes towards the Horizon Witness and Victim Care Suite, which the PCC also allocates approximately half of the budget for that service. So how we've managed that shortfall this year is effectively just altering and moving some and reprioritising some of our budgets in our victim portfolio from the PCC's funding. So the PCC has covered that gap. For next year, of course, it was a one-year allocation. We do not know what the funding is next year. It's been fed back since the creation of this fund for about 20 years ago, when PCCs were created, so about 12 years ago. It's always been an annual allocation, which makes it obviously extremely difficult to plan long-term services, given that victim services is a legal duty for PCC. So it's disappointing we still are in a sort of annual cycle for that, but we are prepared and manage that. And of course, we manage our contracts accordingly to those risks, which again is not great for our providers because it doesn't always provide them with certainty that they need around the finances. But it's something, as I'm sure many who work with local authority contracts and different funding streams recognise, it's just one of the unfortunate things we have to work with. But we've managed it in year this year, and we do not know what the allocation will be for future years.
Thank you very much. That was great. So in terms of reprioritisation, and I appreciate if you don't know from the top of your head, which area was those £36,000 taken away? Could you
So it was related. I think it was from memory, Councillor. Again, I may need to check. There was a related domestic abuse expansion of a service that we managed to work with our providers to reduce the cost, but also renegotiate another part of our contract. So it was it was sort of part of that, moving things around, reshaping a service a little bit to obviously minimise impact. And that was work done with our providers. So there was no significant impact. It wasn't unexpected because it was looking at services that may not have been as effective as we would have liked them to be.
Councillor Amin. Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to comment the improvement in crime and dissociative behaviour to the PCC and the Chief Constable. I think it's great to see crime falling, but I'm a little bit concerned that the fall of crime is falling not being felt equally amongst all parts of the communities. And as you rightly said, obviously, there are still 42% do feel that they are not that confident as the other 64%. So, and I have to say, even though I do see that crime has fallen, I do see things have improved even though But as we know, they have historically they have been, I think, as you said, I mean, they didn't report, but they still feel what is their point of reporting, nothing is going to work for them. And I think this is still exception amongst those people within those areas and with those areas. As things have improved, I think I'm not sure whether you have any plans how we can encourage those people to be more confident in reporting, and so they can equally feel that with kind of falling and their concerns are being listened to.
Thank you, Councillor. We are clearly doing some things right. We need to do more things right, and we need to continue to try and look for other areas whereby and means by which we can improve trust and confidence. There are clearly spikes in antisocial behaviour that flare up across the county, and that will never be the case. Last night I was at Bradford on Avon area board, and surprisingly there has been a spike of antisocial behaviour there, but it is often when you get a particular family move into an area, and that's when we have targeted deterrence. That's where we will work with the council, with housing, with national health, so as to, once identified, we will then try and put together a composite response to try and tackle it. But it is a societal issue, and society is becoming more divided, which means we're going to see more, likely to see more antisocial spikes, and the chief constable is fully aware of that, and we have to be able to target our resources to those hotspots when they flare.
Thank you, and that's really appreciated. As you rightly say, where you see the flare, but the fact is, those people still do not feel as confident to be told, and therefore we have to go out to the community and build that trust. But yes, as I say, I can clearly see crime has dropped and deterioration has dropped, but that is still not the feeling amongst those communities. And what more can we do for those communities? And in all honesty, it is quite fair to say that they are not the equal benefit of the area. Thank you.
All we can do is collectively keep trying.
Thank you. Councillor Hyde.
Yeah, thank you. I was noticed in here, for instance, priority groups in the criminal justice system, you say female women basically in the criminal justice system. And I asked a similar question yesterday in Wiltshire, when we had a presentation there. There was lots of information, lots of background data about the needs of women, but I couldn't see in the criminal justice system, but I couldn't see how it was reflected in the way that we're providing support to reduce reoffending. And I'm aware of other places that I am working and have worked, how women, because they are a small minority of particularly prison leavers, but people in the criminal justice system, quite often the services that we provide to reduce reoffending, including our court resolutions and all the rest of it, are unconsciously geared towards males. Have we been successful, do you think, in ensuring that we're recognising the different reasons for crime, the different pattern of crime of women in the criminal justice system?
Thank you, Councillor. That's a really interesting question, and I chair the Wiltshire Criminal Justice Board, as you will know. There is a new group that has been formed within the Southwest, and we had a presentation from them at the last Wiltshire Criminal Justice Board, which is designed specifically to address the issue of women within the criminal justice sector. Clearly, there is more that we can do. So having a specialist group now formed to advise us will be beneficial, I'm sure. But
thank you, Commissioner. Thank you so much. Really interesting question, and I'm going to try and summarise an answer because there are so many facets to this. I think I could probably dominate the rest of the morning, and I'm going to try not to. So I think in terms of your point, which is regards to the specific needs of women in the criminal justice system, I think there's an overall recognition across the MOJ. I go to many national and local meetings with regards to trying to reduce any personal injuries, actually, but particularly children and women, because we understand the disproportionality that happens, and I mean that from a broader sense, not just from a sex or gender perspective. For women particularly for young women and girls, we are looking at, you'll know now that when they enter the criminal justice system, which we try and avoid anyway, and I'll come to that in a second, they now don't go to youth offending institutions, they go elsewhere, because we are seeing nationally that's a better way to support young women and girls that enter. In terms of the females that come out of the criminal justice system, as the Commissioner said, there's now more efforts in recognising this bespoke support. And if you look at a lot of criminality that involves a female being both a victim and a subject of that criminal investigation, we have improved our response through our dedicated vulnerability directorate to actually try and be able to manage that a bit better. So we've moved everything within Wiltshire Police into a dedicated vulnerability directorate, led by an unbelievably experienced head superintendent who we actually poached from the Metropolitan Police Service, who has been doing this for decades, to try and make sure that we provide much better support. From an out-of-court resolution perspective, we have really been increasing that across all offenders, be it young people, adults, female, male, the wider diversity considerations we need to consider. And we have seen a huge increase in that, because particularly we just don't want people to go into the criminal justice system if they don't have to. So there's lots of different ways that we can cut the cake of your question, Councillor, and I really do welcome it. If what we have said isn't satisfying you in terms of detailed percentages, very happy to take this offline. We're very focused on it from a national and local perspective. We're really focused on it, and we're trying to make sure that we provide that bespoke support. And my update when we get there, I'm going to talk a little bit more about Borg and how we're supporting people within the world of Borg, which hopefully also might answer your question a bit more.
Can I just come back? I mean, just because I don't think that the police can solve that problem on their own. We've just done some research on this, and I know that when you ask people what the main issues are, it's going to be around housing, it's going to be around housing and support, it's going to be around access to substance misuse services, and also mental health services in many cases, and also support around domestic abuse and historic domestic abuse and the result of that. So it's a whole range of people need to come together to actually provide that support, and perhaps the partnership can help all that together.
I couldn't agree more, and in fact I was reading some MOJ documents today with regards to the new approaches to this type of consideration, and there's very much a broad brush, right, actually, where are the other social elements to this, where's the property considerations, where's the being a victim of crime and becoming public, where is all of this, and very much that's on the agenda of the MOJ as well. So it's such an intricate question, so I've tried to give you an answer, but if you want more detail, then please let the Commissioner know and we can try and help.
Thank you. Nalji first.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Haggard, just again to reassure you, so the sort of the infrastructure that you outlined in terms of looking at those assistance factors, particularly for women within the prison sector, but also within our local communities, is vitally important. So as part of our reducing reoffending partnership structure that feeds into the Criminal Justice Board, as the PCC said, there is a specific group, including providers, local charities, voluntary third sector, as well as local authority partners and representatives from HMP Eastwood Park, which is the female prison estate in the region, regularly meet and have a strategy to tackle exactly those issues you've mentioned around drug substance misuse, impacts of on women both as victims and as offenders, and particularly as well the impact on children and families when women enter the criminal justice system, because again, of course, what we're trying to do is link that whole agenda together to make sure that people maintain relationships, but also where possible that impact on the family, particularly when women are sent to prison, has on the rest of the family. So to reassure, it is part of our Criminal Justice Board plan. It's a national priority, it's a regional priority, and it's a local priority in our respective strategies. And there's investment going in there with specific commissioned services and working with charities like the Nelson Trust, who work across Wiltshire and Swindon.
Brilliant, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Monroe.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll just follow the same theme about the antisocial behaviour on board counselling in London and Hollywood. Residents come to us and say, we have trouble with antisocial behaviour on the street, and we say, well, report it to the police. They said, well, we're scared, but if we report it, we become the victims as well then. Are there any other ways of reporting, we suggested 101 as well and said you don't have to give your name on it, but then said these people will find out. What can we do to support these residents?
Well, the most obvious route is to go via Crime Stoppers, which is completely anonymous. But when the neighbourhood police teams go out now and give their briefings, or even if you go onto the Wiltshire Police website and put and smack bang in the middle, you can put your postcode. Up will come the details of your neighbourhood team with their email addresses, so you can email the individual officers, and therefore that is then between that individual who's got a complaint and the officer, so it does not need to become public. So if you look on the website, the chief has put in so many better ways by which we can communicate with the public, and not so much we can communicate, but so the public can come to us with their questions.
Oh, thank you.
Councillor Vine?
Oh, thank you. Yes, I'm Councillor Vine from the Growth Ward in Trowbridge. But what I wanted to just say this morning at the meeting, something Councillor Amin said about building your confidence in your residents to report. I really have seen action in Trowbridge around that very issue. It's taken a number of meetings and a number of very public media promotions, but we've had the police backing us and taking the appropriate action in Trowbridge, but also the Chamber of Commerce have been very proactive. So I would encourage that using social media to reframe some of those thoughts about not wanting to report or seeing no point in reporting, because I've heard that said in meetings 2 or 3 months ago, and it feels very much in my locality that it's got better and it feels safer for some people. Not everybody, you're absolutely right. I wondered if I could just introduce another query I have about the wait time at the court, and this may not be the right place, but I have a resident who's been waiting almost 2 years now to see the perpetrator of sexual violence brought to court. We don't know what the outcome of that might be, but I wondered if you could help me understand that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
So Tuesday I chaired, this quarter's Wiltshire Criminal Justice Board. It's a huge problem in terms of court listings, putting that into lay speak, finding a space in the court schedules, both magistrates and Crown Courts. There are all sorts of resource issues. Magistrates' courts struggle to find legal advisors, because magistrates have to have a legal advisor to assist them. And then when it comes to Crown Court, it's devastating for victims to have to wait for 2 years. But it ultimately comes down to a lack of funding for the Ministry of Justice. And it is really depressive when you're chairing this board and hearing how some really good people are working their socks off to manage with limited resources to try and solve those issues. Everything from from the 2 judges, for example, who were on the committee this week, through to the chair of the magistrates, to those people who manage the courts. It's an incredibly difficult, complex job, getting everybody to the court at the right time, both victims, defence, prosecution, administrators. It's a tough job and it requires resources, and those resources sadly are not available. And that then has a knock-on effect back into the police force and my office, and the provision, the amount of resources that we've got to work, the amount of money we can give to Horizon to manage those victims who are stuck now for perhaps 2 years rather than 1 year. 1 year is too long. So it is all more money and we're not getting it. So I really, really sympathise, but there are a lot of good people who are putting their brains to try and solve this issue, but ultimately you can only do so much with what you've got. pretty depressing.
Thank you. So would it be the case that my resident could address it through obviously their local MP, sometimes that not as effective as we'd like, to the Ministry of Justice, I'm just very stuck with, it's very painful.
Can I ask, could we take this offline, because we're on time constraint today?
Thank you.
You've got a valid point,
Yeah.
and I've been on this for 5 years, and it just constantly comes on. So I think we best can Julie take this outside and see what information or where to signpost those residents, please.
Of course, Chair.
Thank you.
Ross, quickly. I'm time constrained.
First off, I echo Julie's comments there. I know somebody who's going through it 3 years before the next court case comes up in January. I think that's 3 years from the initial offence and everything else. It's a long story, but I really echo that. How can people get on with their lives when that's being dragged out? And I know there's nothing we can do. The main thing I wanted to say was yesterday, as Alan alluded to, Julie and I were at the Safeguarding Committee at Wiltshire Council, and we had a report on family hubs. We also had the Wiltshire the Youth Justice annual report as well, all made good reading. But one thing that came out about the family hubs, and this is, I'm going to read it now, it says, domestic abuse remains the most frequently reported safeguarding concern within the family hub. Blah, 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 and then the final paragraph, the final sentence, however, limitations in face-to-face support and long waiting lists for specialist service highlight the need for continued advocacy in place for support pathways. In Chippenham, we've got the family hub in the same building as the police, and I know they kind of talk to each other. And the family hubs are evolving. I think they've taken on the job, which it's just getting more and more and more all the time. And they're working through their limitations and growing because of that. But does will the police work closely with the family hubs? Because this is about early intervention. These are the families that come when they're in desperate need, and it's usually early in their and the domestic abuse is there, and the kids and the problems the kids have, and that's, to me, that's where we should be focusing, so we can get into these disruptive families early. So is there work going on with them?
I think that's going to be part of the Chief's presentation, or Chief, you want to?
The short answer was yes. We have a statutory responsibility to work with our partners. Any contact that we have with children and young people, we have a statutory responsibility to make sure we refer it into our partner pathways. We have different meetings. We have the multi-agency safeguarding hubs, which link to the family hub. So the short answer is yes. I think that the complexity is actually the challenge on the supporting functions across all of the partnership. And that's really the difficulty. But yes, we do work very closely with them. And the relationship is very good. It's just a challenge with regards to the abilities of all of us to deliver everything.
Thank you.
Councillor Asplin.
Hello. Yeah, I thought I'd just make a point. I live in a fairly rural community down in Bulford. When we had issues with low-level crimes, and it was getting to a point, particularly with trail bikes and other such things, I offered myself up as a contact point, because people don't want to contact the police or are afraid of consequences. You as council leaders and councillors should really offer yourself up as a secondary point and then feed that information on to the police, because we are here in the end to make sure that crime is stamped on. And if we have to take a more leadership role in that fact, then we ought to do so. And the question I do have for you, Commissioner, with the financial restraints that are currently ongoing, the budget for the Office of the PCC last year was 7.4 million. Do you think that the bean counters might come for you before they come for anybody else?
I don't think they come for us before they come to anybody else. If you look at our budget, then the Chief Constable gets 97% of the budget, and my office takes 3%, 2% of that goes towards the commissioning services, which provide intimate support to the police force. And many of the charitable services that we provide support for, some of them are extremely large and significant, such as the Sexual Assault Referral Centre in Swindon. My office funds that. But also to help the police force and to help you, Wiltshire PCC, my office has taken on functions that not all other OPCCs have. For example, every complaint that comes in about Wiltshire Police Force comes into my office, and my office pays for the management of those people who manage those complaints, because we don't think it's right and proper that the police should mark their own homework. So that is done independently in Wiltshire Police Force by my office. My office also, unlike many other police forces, we fund the legal services that you would be using should you wish to take Wiltshire Police Force to court or hold them to account legally. So every OPCC in the country is different. Mine happens to be is more engaged with the force than most others. And as I've briefed the council in the past, I see my job and that of the OPCC is to turn a police force into a police service. And it's that difference which costs 3%, 2% of the budget, 1% of the budget is providing support to you in terms of good governance. So as you hold me to account, I have to hold the Chief Constable to account, have people produce all these reports, get involved with the community safety partnerships as you'll hear later to improve the coordination that we have when we talk about partnership approaches. It's my job under legislation to convene many of those partnerships. So it isn't as if we are just sitting there doing not a lot. We are really very, very tightly partnership with Wiltshire Police Force.
Thank you, Commissioner, because I'm running out of time because I need the Chief Constable on vote. Is it a quick question, Councillor Wilson? Please.
Very quick. It's a follow-up question from a topic that was raised by my colleagues on the right-hand side and left-hand side. Whilst you explained that you can influence court times, you don't have direct control. Where you have direct control is those victims and witness services like Horizon support. So I just have a question, because in your report there's a risk around waiting times for domestic abuse support and also psych. So again, I appreciate you may not know the detail of the top of your head, so if you want to provide written answer, that's great. But it would be really good for us as a committee to understand specifically what are those waiting times and how do we compare with our neighbouring forces.
We can certainly provide that detail for you subsequently.
Thank you very much, everyone, and sorry to keep you waiting, Chief Constable.
Thank you so much, Chair, and it's lovely to see you all. Thank you very much for the invite. And the performance data has been provided in your pack, so I wasn't going to go through all of that line by line. I'm really happy at any point in my update to all of you to provide any further insights I can give you. My plan today, if it was all right, is to talk to you a little bit about some of the additional work we're doing with regards to our war response, particularly in relation to the Angelina recommendations and our Operation Criteria response, which is very much looking at how we support people who are victims of both serious sexual offences and group-based child sexual exploitation. I was planning to talk to you a little bit about the upcoming changes or progress, I suppose, is another way, with regards to our Home Office departments for delivery against performance objectives, just to give you a bit of a strategic perspective on that. And then finally, I was going to talk to you about our upcoming peer inspection. Chair, is that okay, those three
Yes,
areas?
please.
I'm very happy. So first of all, as I say, the Commissioner has very kindly outlined our overarching response. I think all of you can recognise 58% of people thinking that we're doing well is great, but 42% of people thinking that we're not is not so great. So we do recognise that. Councillor Mean, you talking about the communities and other councillors talking about the communities that aren't feeling that. My view on that is making sure that we're ever more effective, of course, making sure that we're taking all of into account their behaviours but it's about visibility and engagement. And I think if you look at the progress of that since we reinstated the neighbourhood policing teams in January 2024, we're much better. We're not where we want to be and where we need to be, but we're better. And I think that some of the more bespoke approaches with regards to working with our retail communities in town centres, working with our maritime economy community, we're trying to really push into some of the areas where we haven't before. And again, some of that I'll pick up with our walk update. But I do take your point and I do agree with you. We just need to do more. The challenge with doing more is, of course, I need to then use my resources to the best of my ability, and that's my constant operational churn in terms of where do I place my resources. Over the last few weeks, we have had the Safer Streets Summer Initiative, where we've had additional patrolling in hotspots across the county. And when I say county, I mean all of Wiltshire, Swindon and Wiltshire, and we have seen an impact of that. And of course, we're stuck bang, I was going to say in the middle, we're not, because it's Thursday, and we're at the end of our rural crime proactive week as well. And there's been lots of coverage, and we've been working with naval forces as well. So largely our performance is going in the right direction. Where it's not, we are recognising it, and we are spearheading the work there to make sure, particularly when it comes to supporting victims and witnesses, to make sure that we can provide that more support. Council, your point around the delay in court hearings, which the Commissioner absolutely, as he says, can influence victim control. We do recognise the impact on our victims and witnesses. We do recognise the possibility of maintaining trust and confidence in the criminal justice system, and it is very much the sort of reality is it's very much the support services provided through the OQCC and the police officers and police staff themselves that are trying to support our victims and witnesses. But delays, we know the inevitability, and we're working really hard to try and protect against that, so we can still hold people to justice. It's a really horrible situation that we're in, and I don't think anybody in any part of the criminal justice system would want to be where we are, but we do recognise that. We have a part of the conversation that we had on Tuesday about what we can do. From a VORG perspective, I just wanted to counter through some of the progress we've made in the last 6 months or so in terms of really working with our communities again, recognising the trust and confidence issues, particularly.
Chief Constable, sorry, could you just, what's the acronym stands for?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Violence against women and girls. I'm so sorry. That's a classic cop approach, isn't it? With acronyms everywhere. I'm so sorry. Violence against women and girls. I'm going to call that VORG. Is everyone okay? Sorry, I'm so
People
sorry.
who are listening, watching on
I beg your
YouTube,
pardon, Chair.
or
I'm so sorry.
understand of both.
No, of course, you're quite right. I'm so sorry. So over the recent 6 months, we've been working much more with regards to our nighttime economy areas, Councillor, as I referred to. We call it Operation Vigilance, where we're working with our nighttime economy. We're being more proactive in nighttime economy spaces to look at sexualised predatory behaviour of perpetrators. We're also working more with our vigilant communities, our taxi drivers, our bus drivers, our doorsteps, all these people that actually are out and about and perhaps see dangerous behaviours and can bring it to our attention. We have had a series of online events and conferences recently, and we've also pushed out a lot of social media, including an interview with acting DCI Claire Smith. We're working much more with colleges to make sure that young people are aware of spiking awareness, and using our neighbourhood harm reduction units to make sure that we can really protect young people across the board. That's not just the board events, actually, but that's to make sure that young people are aware of the challenges with regards to spiking, because we obviously saw an increase of that across England and Wales over the last 12 months. One of the areas, I'm proud of everything that my people are doing, but one of the things that I'm really pleased about is the work with young people, but also that we're proactively providing 6-monthly updates with regards to our progress in relation to board offences and to all our area boards. That actually started with a request that came from Salisbury area board last autumn, and now every 6 months we provide that proactive update, which hopefully is providing a bit more trust and confidence for all of you that we are progressing. I mentioned the Angelina recommendations on obstetricia. We are one of the first forces to embed the new policies that come out of the Angelina recommendations, which is where we look at how we can keep young people safe, keep people who are at risk of being preyed upon with regards to board and child sexual exploitation. We've embedded new policies. We are delivering on all of the Angelina recommendations and also all of the obstetricia recommendations. And in fact, the obstetricia is how we support our rape and serious sexual offences victims much more. And we've actually been highlighted as best practice, and we're working with the Home Office to share some of the best practice that we've been doing locally. I won't go into some of the performance figures, except to say that we are seeing an increase in reporting with regards to war-related offences across the board, including domestic abuse offences. this is a really tricky claim to make, and I believe that part of that is because we are seeing an increase in trust and confidence, and people are more trusting of us that we will do something when they come forward. And that probably reflects also some of the increased reporting, particularly in the retail community, and others that you see in the performance plan. Chair, I'm very conscious of time. That was a whistle stop tour in terms of part one. Very happy to take questions.
First is Councillor Williams.
Thank you. Reference to the neighbourhood police teams and all that. As councillors, we are involved with them a lot, and we welcome that, and thank you for that. But I think one of the dissatisfactions maybe from the public is that they're not involved so much with them. I know they come around the areas and they advertise, they say we're going to be in the sports field or a record or like that. But when you've got a rural area with lots of little villages and people working during the day and all that, I know at times nobody visits them. I think that needs some better coordination when they go out and to meet with people and picking the times. The other thing is that visits to parish council meetings. Again, I got 5 this week, but there's no police presence at them. And this is one of the consistent things. They get the report. The report is detailed. It's a lot of stats. And what they request is somebody to flesh that out a bit and make it more personal for where they live, rather than just the area. It's a lot of work, I know, and it does depend on work patterns for the police. If they're not available, they can't do it. But it does need a little bit more, I think, if you can help. Air reports are fine. Welcome the BCC and yourself and all that at the air reports, but there's only 4 air reports a year, whereas parish council meetings are every month. So I think rather than just say once in a while, if we could work a pattern out so there could be more attendance to them, it would be beneficial.
You want to come back?
Of course, thank you. So in terms of the visibility piece, if we could possibly take that offline in terms of your specific experiences, that would be really helpful to me. My teams are really trying to be more visible. They're more prominent on social media. And sometimes, to badly quote a 1980s film, Field of Dreams with Kevin Costner, for anyone who is as old as me, sort of the whole, if you build it, we will come kind of thing. If you invite us, we'll try and be there, but sometimes you don't know where to be. So again, it's an invite to all councillors that if you're still feeling that way, bear in mind we have seen such an increase. It is more challenging in the rural areas. I'm also quite conscious that to my right there's a gentleman who's actually knocking on doors this week in the rural communities to actually have a chat with some of our communities, with some of my policing teams. So we are trying to, I know it's not being felt everywhere, despite the increase, but let's take it offline, because I don't push back on your points. We're really trying.
I recognise.
No, I know. And in terms of your point, excuse me, around parish meetings, I'm so sorry. Excuse me, around parish meetings and area boards. Again, I think myself and the Commissioner were talking about just this, actually, about where we need to be and when we need to be. And if I may, Chair, can I take that up? Because that's a huge number of meetings. I know it's a really great opportunity for my policing teams to speak with their communities. I don't want to promise something that I can't consistently deliver. So if I may I take that away, have a look, map out what we've got across Wiltshire and Swindon, and come up with a plan that we can be a bit more consistent. So would that be acceptable?
Yeah, thank you.
Is that okay with you, Commissioner?
It is. If I just add one piece to that, because it is a huge challenge. There are 254 parishes in Wiltshire, and then we've got the bigger parishes,
19
in Swindon. So getting out and about, perhaps it would be helpful if you as councillors could specify one a year, perhaps, rather than expecting us to turn up at every one, or with that many. If you, for example, we're going to be in Salisbury this afternoon, they are having a day focused on public security and policing. So actually both the chief and I are going to go to that. So if you wanted to have a parish council meeting once a year that focused on policing, then we would perhaps be able to turn up more. Just a thought. We will explore it.
Yeah, just to come back, one of the issues is that they always have the agenda items for the parish council meetings, and it's outside bodies, Wiltshire Council, police. But 9 times out of 10, police on there, and it creates that they're not interested, sort of being amongst the parish councillors. I realise there are issues to be guarded, but it's trying to tell those people as well. Yeah, I'll leave it there for now.
I think so. I think we can come up with something. I just don't know what it is off the top of my head right now.
Can I just say, I think the Office of the Police Crime Commissioner has been working hard to engage with all the parishes, because I did mentioned, I was dissatisfied about 2 years ago, and the effort has been made greatly. And as the Commissioner says, the 270 parish councils is impossible. So, and I don't know, Commissioner, because you seem to get an email, as a parish council, I get an email as well from your office. So if you've got all the clerks' details to pass on to the councillors, if there's a specific date there's an issue, then they can request somebody from the police to go to the parish meetings. So I do understand, your stretch in that respect, but I have to say, since 2 years ago when I made a really I go at the Commissioner, he's made an effort to sort that out, and it's been quite visible to see that. Councillor,
Yeah, just on that, you said you've got 5 parish councils in is that your area board area?
That's my patch.
Oh, your patch. I just don't want to appear to be a goody-goody, but in our area we have a parish forum, which 4 times a year representatives from each of the parishes in the area meet at that, and the police always come to that. They're always there. They're always good presentations. And I know in this Chippenham area, I know in the Calne area, they did have focus on 5, which is the 5 parish councils in that area as well, who got together quarterly to talk about all sorts of things. Because the one thing I hate to see is that it go to meetings after meetings after meetings, and the same police officer is there telling the same story. And I'm sat there thinking, shouldn't you be out on the streets doing the job rather than coming to these endless meetings when they could be focused into one? And that's a good point, maybe that one annual meeting is a police dedicated meeting, but annually, but there must be a way around it. And I know our parish forum, it works a dream.
Right, I think I'm running out of time. It's good points made, and as I said, I think if there is a serious need for any parishes, I think they can call off on the, Commissioner or Chief Constable to send somebody over if there's a serious matter that needs to be resolved. Apart from that, I think you will have to take it outside this meeting. That's okay.
Thank you, Chair, and we'll have a problem about this. Thank you. So the next just update I wanted to give you was I'm quite sure you're all aware of the national reform debate with regards to policing, and we're waiting for a white paper to be produced, which is a collaborative effort, obviously with the Home Office, with the policing ministers, and all of those within Whitehall, which have a view and their influence over policing, and of course policing itself. It's going to be this autumn. We haven't quite got a date yet for publication, but that's going to be a key indicator in terms of the view of the government. What is happening in the next few months as well in support of this is the government's creation of the exact title, but the government has created a sort of police performance portfolio within their delivery, and we are awaiting details of. We're in the middle of a consultation about what should be in that. And I need to apply today actually on behalf of the Wiltshire Police, and then we'll have a description about what's going to be in there. The reason you might think, what on earth is Catherine talking about this? Many people respond to me about that conversation, but the reason I mention that is because that is going to be a national requirement for performance. So there's that. Of course, I'm held to account, because I'm Commissioner for the delivery of the performance in the police and crime. I'm also held to account for the requirements of the HMI CFRS appeal requirements, and I'm also held to account for the requirements within the neighbourhood policing guarantee and the local commitments that we've made, and I'm also held to account for my own performance objectives based on my operational review. That's 5 different areas of requirement. Now, clearly, the Police and Crime Commissioner holds me to account on all of your behalf of the Police and Crime Plan. But it is entirely possible that all of those 5 areas of performance frameworks won't be saying exactly the same thing. So we don't know what it's going to look like yet. I'm just raising it because it just creates a challenging position for policing. And I say it from a completely apolitical perspective. It's just a reality of things that we're talking about at the moment to make sure that we can make them closely aligned. Otherwise, goodness me, that's a lot of different performance plates that I'm going to need to keep spinning. I just wanted to raise that, Chair, for your awareness, and very happy to take any questions. No sundry concerns about performance? Oh, no, hello.
May I ask a question?
Yes, Louise.
I understand that your role is to deliver the operation, and I suppose sitting here, it's possibly a slightly theoretical question I've got, is I hear the same things, you know, you hear women in crime, children in crime, substance abuse, housing, reoffending. They're not unusual phenomena. They've been around for a very long time. I feel that there's new priorities. What's been thinking behind this type of resolution? I haven't got it right yet. They're not new things. Nothing's new. But we seem to have new priorities. Is our thinking, is our understanding growing? Are we getting better at this, or are we just trying another approach? I'm not quite sure, really.
Now,
Yes.
I could speak from a national perspective. Commissioner, did you want to take that from a?
You do.
No? So I think that, to be honest, I think some parts of crime are changing. In terms of, if you look at cybercrime, fraud, those kind of things, I think that online criminality is changing nature. I think some of the vulnerability and abuse of children and adults it is changing nature. So I think some of it is that, and us recognising it. And I think that that's part of this. I think that also, and I think I'm speaking about 10 different agencies in this answer, so forgive me if I don't get this quite right, but also with the national approach to the performance framework, they're trying to kind of be able to say this is the national focus of policing in England and Wales, which of course won't necessarily take in some of the more nuanced requirements of London requires something different to Wiltshire, for example. So I don't think this is necessarily new thinking, and they are consulting across the board. But at the moment, it's not all aligned. It's not aligned, and that's what I wanted to raise. But things like the ward element, if you stretch back 25 years when I started policing, actually, were we so commonly talking about violence against women and girls? I'm ashamed to say that we weren't, were we? So things do change, don't they? And we do recognise the vulnerabilities, and we do recognise the needs of victims and witnesses in a different way. So I think that it's trying to find an approach for England and Wales that is a real focus on from a national perspective.
Will you indulge me one more question?
I'm going to look at the chair.
Quick one.
Yeah. Chair's in charge.
Fine, we'll get from the chair. I think for me it's about saying, what is a sensible solution then? Why haven't we yet reached a point where we have a solution? Because it seems to me that these are constant things. And it's not a challenge to you. I think it's a challenge for both. The multi-agency approaches, it just feels, get it together, guys, at the top, and then give people an agenda and ask them to execute together as an overarching framework. And it feels to me that thinking, that enmeshing of those agencies or partnerships is not really thought through. And it's nobody's fault. This is, I guess it's not a question, it's not a reflection. I'm sitting here, and I'm not a councillor, I'm cooperative, and I just look at it from that side and think, haven't we got it right yet? This is not a new thing.
I can provide a very quick and simple solution. If I put my academic hat on, there is a hierarchy of human needs, but the strategic environment in which we need to meet those needs is constantly changing. So those needs are immutable, but the strategic environment constantly changes the challenge in meeting those needs, and that's why we are constantly nuancing our approach.
Quickly, final question.
Just a question just to add, and I think that Louise is raising a really good point. And just from a professional background, there is now more focus on knowledge exchange between police forces and actually scientists and academia, just making sure that that the resolution is has improved. So kind of nationally, there is now kind of like also different angle to look at investigations and just bringing more kind of like researchers to it. So there's been a sense of excellence over this more collaboration.
Thank you. That's fine.
And the absolute final, Councillor.
Sorry, I had to say this. When you say there's someone at the top, my experience of working across a whole range of different authorities and different disciplines is there is no one at the top. You have to actually talk to a whole lot of different agencies whose top is very different in terms of government departments, in terms of geography, in terms of everything else. So you have to bring people together, and it's not a simple thing to do because there is no one with overall responsibility for anything. You are for policing, but to actually meet the demands of the police, you need health, social services, you need health, you
Absolutely.
need probation, you need everyone else involved as well. And there is no one who's responsible for all of it. With my point.
Thank you, councillor. Right, agenda 8, financial pressures facing Wiltshire Police and the OPCC. Who's right to present the report, please?
Hi, I'm David Moran, I'm the interim CFO, section for the OPCC. The report you have has been read, so let me just give a little bit of introduction. I can see what's on the agenda because last February and last January, you had considerable concerns about this year. At the time, I know we spoke about a number of the challenges that we faced and the approach towards it. I'm very grateful for the fact that the PCP agreed to increase supporting funds. So this report, therefore, is an update on how things have gone this year to date, and very much about the direction of travel for the next few years in terms of the financial strategy. Focusing on this year, there have been a number of successes, a lot of success in terms of the financial review programme, making savings and making changes that are improving efficiency in terms of the estates and people and vehicles. And that work is ongoing and is making some significant inroads into what was a very difficult financial position. We currently, as at the end of July, reported that we were getting close to budget, but there are a lot of things that are bubbling and continue to be a challenge over the rest of the year. So I don't want for a second to suggest some complacency. We know the rest of this year will be a challenge and will continue to be a challenge, and we're not quite halfway through yet. So we have to accept the fact that whilst the forecast is there, things are still moving, things are still very much being worked through, and the challenges can obviously catch us out. So what's going on? So at this point, we have made considerable inroads into this year. We've had some success stories. One of them I'll share with you because I know it's in the report, is that of dangerous dogs. At the time that you started, we thought, for example, it may cost, this is the Excel bully that we spend about £500,000 extra this year. Two things. One is we've managed to keep our costs down to close to 300,000, and the other good news is that we were unexpectedly and very thankfully £219,000 in the way of grants. So those things have really come in our favour, but not everything goes close to that. Obviously, something take longer to make savings. But all in all, for this year, I can give some assurance that there has been considerable ground made. The challenges continue. We have at the end of July forecast to coming close to budget. We obviously still have some reserves that we really are trying very hard to use them this year, having relied on them for the last few years to try and make ends meet. Move on to the forthcoming. So we have just embarked on our medium-term financial strategy for 2026 through to, in this case, back to 2030. At this point, it is very much in the early stages of planning, but it's just to really give some assurance that the journey will be to understand what the current as-is position is during this month, and that would be that if things didn't change and we stuck with what we've got, how large a gap it will be. It will then work through iterations through October and November as we seek to try and find a way to meet what we're expecting to be our financial envelope. Those that are not aware, the Home Office is the largest and often the last piece or second last piece in the puzzle, and they tend to release their budget, their expectations in terms of grant in the middle of December, which largely sets a lot of hairs running. And of course, in January, February, we'll be here discussing the precept. It's probably worth pointing out that outside of our control, since many of the things we've discussed today are outside of our control, is a wider assumption now across many police forces that the Home Office is expecting, and this isn't an ask today, but is expecting forces across the country to assume a £14 increase for next year, which I know isn't just what everybody here, because we all would like more of it net by the Home Office and less of it net locally. But I'm just flagging the fact that we have to build a medium-term financial strategy on reasonable assumptions, and the assumption seems to be that is an expectation from the Home Office at this time. Obviously, there's some way to go. Is there anything else anybody wants to pick up in the questions? There is.
Oh, please.
I was curious to read in your report about EV cars and the impact of those on the force. So I just wondered if you could give me a bit more information about the sort of plan around the electric car.
These are very embryonic, and I recognise too, this chief doesn't be much closer to this. Well, what I would say is that across the country, people are looking at the use of EV in policing. The position in this report in terms of the future is to assess where Wiltshire would be, where we should be progressing, and where we would rather not be at the forefront. But if I may pass across to the Chief Constable.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Is that? Thank you. So we do have some new capability, and we do have some points that we can use for EV vehicles with our fleet. It's pretty challenging, as you know, because actually we're a big old county, and we know to a big range of EVs, and particularly if we are trying to respond to something exactly. So the good news is that we haven't not started this. We have started it, but we do have to consider it more. As the CFO has highlighted, our financial review programme of estates, vehicles, and last people, because I wanted to come to people last in terms of the savings that we need. With our fleet, we have looked at exactly that. We've now, in terms of what our mix is, our annual strategic planning timing is in November, and that will be the moment where we look at where has our financial review programme taken us, where do we now need to start injecting and considering other really important strategies such as the EV vehicles to make sure we can still give operational delivery. There's a cost implication for this as well, and where we might be able to work collaboratively with partners and in terms of where we can side with those kind of things. So it's definitely in the thinking, and we haven't done nothing, but we do know that we need to do more.
Any other councillors? Can I just ask, where are we with efficiency saving?
Sorry, I should have explained the financial review programme is about trying to drive out efficiency wherever it possibly can, some of which are short term, some are utility. The success within the financial review programme has been considerable in terms of changes to reduce the number of estates and therefore reduce the running costs of those estates. Obviously, less you have. So there has been reductions in the number of vehicles we have. Again, generating savings. There have also been some work within people related services and to see where we could run with less. And we are also running with less headcount wherever possible, i.e. holding vacancies to also help me. Those are some of the examples. Beyond that, there is procurement, and we continue to look with each procurement with increased governance and scrutiny to see where the procurement outcomes should be challenged further and where we are content with pricing. We are always looking to tender where possible and to squeeze the proverbial bits.
Councillor Henning?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just going through the report, and the chief will probably ask this one. It's the variances on the police officer salaries and an underspend of £500,000 due to vacancies, particularly in specialist roles, which are unlikely to be filled this year. Are there specialist roles we're going to miss in the scheme?
Yes.
Frankly, I'm going to need to go back to look at when this was published to look at the specialist roles that we were referring to. And we have held some vacancies as the CFO has highlighted and frozen them, if you will, so then we can review at the end of this year. There were vacancies we haven't removed reasons, I suppose. There were vacancies that we haven't filled. But I'm going to need to look at when this was published to look at what vacancies that was referring to, and then I'm very happy to provide it.
Okay.
You want to come back?
Yeah. I'm just looking at going through the report and few questions.
Put the mic on, otherwise people can't hear.
Yeah. I mean the whole budget thing, the amount of variables in there, I'm surprised people manage to string anything together and keep the whole thing going. You know, especially when there's large areas where you don't know whether you can get money or not. And all that. So you have my sympathies. Just on contact management, what does that mean? Is that the communication center?
Yeah, it's, yeah.
Yes, it is. Control room, and again, I'm not sure which page of the report that you're on, but you're either going to be looking at our level of resourcing in there, or you're going to be looking at our which has been measurably improved in the last month.
Yeah, I get, and it's IT as well. I think there's some IT savings, but there's some IT, there's on the horizon, which could be a big spend as IT moves on quickly, and especially AI coming into policing probably, and different systems and everything. I can see that is going to be quite a big problem in the coming years.
Are you done?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Christopher Williams.
Working on the assumptions of the £14 on the precept and what you're going to get from central government or the Home Office, are we going to maintain in that committee the levels and build on the success that we've got at the moment for future years, or are we going to have to take, or are we just going to flatline, if you like?
I will answer that in my following presentation.
Thank you.
Done?
Thank you. There's another
Okay.
presentation.
Excellent. I've got one final one. Councillor Asplin.
Yeah, thank you very much. With the government's acknowledgement that they want to close down the various migrant hotels they're using and move them into army barracks, there's an awful amount of army barracks in Wiltshire. Are we expecting extra funding from the government to sort out these issues? Because they'll rapidly become flashpoints.
I have asked the MOD, bearing in mind that there are a number of camps that I know, West Down, for example, which are effectively empty and they're old barrack style accommodation blocks. I have posed the question, which barracks are you talking about? But as yet they've not thought through the detail. They have not identified the barracks. They have not identified the costs. But I will be keeping a very close eye on that.
Any further questions? Thank you, David. Right, agenda 9, Police and Crime Panel Annual Reports 24-25. The panel is required by 2011 Act to make a report or recommendation on the PCC's annual report. The summary page and report are available in Agenda Supplement 1. PCC?
Thank you, Chair. I can keep this extremely short in terms of the report, because it broadly reflects the first report that I gave, in that we are looking at longer trends, of course, because it's an annual report, and all of those trends are positive. And the one that I know you are always particularly interested in, and Ross, as Councillor Henry's just raised, is the contact centre. And of course, our timings now are 999, we're down 7 seconds, and 101, we're down 49 seconds, which, bearing in mind that 18 months ago we had the slowest response times in the country, we were last I looked 16th, and I think we're probably higher than that. But that really leads on to the bigger picture that you referred to, and the future, which is, will we be able to continue to make these improvements? And you've also raised, Councillor Henning, the number of assumptions that there are, that we are trying to conduct our planning around right now. That does mean that the future is an assumption, and we really don't know. It is very difficult to predict what the future is going to be and what the service will be that we can deliver in the future. If the grant stays pretty much as it is now, that's the central grant, which did not last year reflect the budgetary pressures which occur every year. Which did not reflect the employer's national insurance contribution, did not allow us to, did not reflect the whole pay rise. There are a whole raft of other issues which we were not fully funded. If the budget is tightened, the central grant is tightened in the same way next year, we would not be able to continue to deliver. Would we be able to mainline and stay as we are? We would work incredibly hard to do that. And of course, we would work hard. The second half, the 50%, is council tax. We have been told that council tax is going to stay at £14 per family household. If that does stay the same, and we are assuming that it will, then our budgetary deficit will be to an extent that we will not be mainlining. We will not be able to provide the service that we are doing and have been doing for the last year. It is, I'm afraid, a pretty depressing picture, because I believe, and I'm confident, that the Chief of Corporate Services, David Moran, as our financial officer, we have just about weaned out all of the fat within the system now. There is a little bit around the edges that we can still winnow out of the system. Going through every single contract, line by line, to see if we can get a better deal elsewhere is something that we are going through right now. There will be further savings, but they are going to be minor. Right now, within the force, we are doing some serious brainstorming and looking at what the consequences will be post-Christmas if there is no increase to our budget. And I'm particularly concerned that the police reform under the comprehensive spending review, there was no money allocated for centralised police reform. Should that be top slice in my budget, we would be in reverse. So what can we do about it? Well, we all need to, well, we and the force will continue to look for every sort of radical solution that we possibly can in order to maintain and improve the journey. We're looking for data, we're looking at IT, we're looking at robotics, we're looking at AI, every sort of system you can imagine. We're looking at regional collaborations, we're looking at collaborations with partner neighbourhood policing forces, whereby we can combine, amalgamate some of our corporate back office site services to save money that we can deliver to the front line to continue that level of service that we're currently providing. But it is, when I look forward at the horizon, it is extremely worrying in that we cannot guarantee. I can no longer, hand on heart, tell you that we will guarantee to provide the same level of service next year. What we need to do now is plan, which we are, and brainstorm radical action that we will need to take in looking at our estates, looking at our manpower, and looking at silver bullets, changes to systems, operations, procedures, to try and cope with our future financial environment. So that's my honest appraisal of where we are at.
Okay, Councillor Buckner.
So I think there's quite a lot of stuff that we can do as regards helping with community expectation setting. And I hate to disagree with my colleague, Mr. Williams here, Councillor Williams, but my view about attendance of police at parish council meetings is that it's generally complete and utter waste of their valuable time. And what we should be doing is saying to them, why do you want them there? How else can we do all of this? I know it's almost very minor stuff, but antisocial behaviour, anything that happens in the community that is community-based crime, if you like, because antisocial behaviour is people annoying people. I do honestly feel there's a lot more that we can do to help manage those situations ourselves and also to set expectations. A number of times over the years, I've had conversations with people about, for example, a police station. Well, they're going to close the police station, right? And the net effect of that is what? Well, I won't feel safe unless there's a police station. I said, so you're telling me that you need a building in order to feel safe? Yes. I said, but, when do you go to the police station? Well, I don't, but, I just want to know it's there. And I said, so you prefer to have a building where police can go and sit and have a cup of coffee rather than being out and about in the streets? Well, I might have to show my documents. Oh, God, yeah. So there's still a lot of really old-fashioned thinking, but I don't think we've addressed those. And I think that there is scope there for doing a lot more re-education and expectation setting before we can. That's got to start now.
That's exactly what I'm starting to do now. I've published my letter. I need to set the narrative now so that people's expectations are realistic. But there is also, it's tricky when we have, one of the great things about Wiltshire, in particular Swindon, we've got so many diverse communities. They all have their own different perspective of how policing should be enacted. And they all have, well, it is, you're very right. I mean, I had to reply to a long email yesterday from a particular mayor saying, why did you close our police station 2 years ago? And it's like, it's 2 years a bit late. So it is true, but Councillor, we must continually assess the strategic environment so that we best address the hierarchy of human needs.
Councillor Buckner wants to come
Right, no, it's okay.
It's okay now, is it?
Yeah.
Councillors, just need to remind, we on this his report, we need to, put different recommendations, make comments and recommendation for the panel for his report. So bear that in mind. Councillor Vine, you wanted to speak?
I was seeking reassurance actually because the report doesn't mention anything about the helicopter. A little bit of but last time we were together, you'd come from a meeting regarding helicopter. And I see it as a vital resource for the county, but I don't know if you do, and I'd like some reassurance about that it will stay available to us.
There are certain functions that a police force needs which are best provided by aerial platforms. They can either be piloted or not piloted platforms. Unpiloted platforms are much cheaper than piloted platforms. And looking at the huge advances that have been happening, which have accelerated through to what's happening in Ukraine and the use of drones, then the fact that we are still paying for fixed-wing aircraft, which take off from West Midlands, and we pay regionally for these aircraft, we pay in the southwest £176,000 an hour for those two aircraft. We used them twice for 2 hours last year, and we had to pay for them. There are some tasks that are best delivered by helicopters, but they are rapidly decreasing, and drones are much cheaper. We've got 35 drones now in Wiltshire Police Force, and more than that in terms of pilots. We scarcely need the National Police Air Service any longer for our requirements. It's a lot of money, but we are tied into what's called an Section 22 collaboration. It's like a contract, and the only person who can let me and us out of that contract is the Home Secretary, and I have been fighting our corner at every meeting that I go to. I am enemy number one, as far as some people are concerned, when it comes to the use of helicopters. But until we have an alternate plan, and there is an alternate plan, now being developed by a team within the National Police Chief Council. Our #1 pilot in Wiltshire is part of that team, and I am hoping very much that we will move to that new strategy, which will involve an increasing use of drones and a decreasing use of piloted aircraft. It's a tough one because it's top-down, driven by the Home Secretary, but I'm working on it.
That was really helpful to know, because that was my other question, was the use of drones. That's really good to know that Wiltshire's on the ball. Thank you.
Further questions? Do we have any further comments or to make recommendation, or as the Commissioner's annual report? So that's me.
Just a question on, I noticed in the report, it mentioned that you give various grants via the proceeds of crime, up to £5,000 is. Is the proceeds of crime fund something that you can tap into, or to actually self-fund your force?
If we could, there is the proceeds of crime, and it's all strictly controlled. We don't get as much as I wish we could. For example, I have a number of us have just signed a letter to the Home Secretary asking if we could have the speeding fines back, to help fund and wash our face, for example, with our roads policing unit. If we can get the fines back, that they go automatically to the Treasury. There are some proceeds of crime that we get, but it's not much. The biggest one is fines. If I could get that back, that would be huge for us, especially as we've done so well in increasing our speed enforcement sanctions in Wiltshire Police Force. So it's something that we are watching, Councillor.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. I would just like to say thank you very much for the report, and special thanks to your office for looking out to do this.
Thank you. That comes out of the 1% of the budget.
I just wanted to know you had your ducks in, really, that's it.
Right. Councillor Mead, sorry.
No, I was just going to echo Councillor Wilson's comments as well. I think we haven't talked much about specials. So as you are saying that we are going to a challenging period, I'm just wondering whether we have a target for improving specials.
I'll let the Chief address that, but we love our specials. We've got some fantastic individuals in the force.
We really do, and they are absolutely incredible. And if you look at over the last few years, the huge amount of proactive work our specialists have done. I know they're being proactively deployed across Swindon across the next 10 days, and they've been out and about across the county, particularly as part of Rural Crime Week. And I have the absolute honour of going to the latest passing out parade this Saturday of our latest cohort special. So we really embrace everything that they do. In terms of our overarching commitment, we have made a commitment as part of the Neighbourhood Policing Guarantee that will increase this year by 40 specials. I'm quite conscious that lots of people in the public will listen to this, so please come and be a special with Wiltshire Police, because it's incredible. What we're also looking to do is whether we can push the bespoke recruitment of specials with specialist skills. There are a whole host of unbelievable people across our communities who might be able to come and assist in specific things, and who will be experts in specific things, and we're looking at how we can do some more bespoke recruitment to try and tackle some of the criminality that actually we were talking about earlier, the fraud, the cyber, and those kind of things. So we have a plan. We're on constant recruitment. So we say about to go to the next passing out parade this Saturday, and yes, we will increase over the next 12 months. But please, anybody, come along, because we would love you to join the family of Wiltshire.
Thank you. Well, we already lost account of these specials.
You're welcome, Councillor.
Is there an age limit for specials?
No.
Nobody older than me, Chris.
I'll retire then, Chris.
Any further questions? No, right. Any recommendation anybody wants to put forward to the Commissioner's annual report? Oh, no.
Specials.
Matt was trying to say, if you wanted any further information on helicopters and drones as well, if you want to put that into the reports. Yeah, can have that. Councillor Hay.
I was wondering about whether we could, building on the idea of us all working together, kind of like working with the Police and Crime Commissioner and the police to build partnerships with other agencies, local authorities, to actually help to achieve police ends through whatever means we can find. That partnership, the police are the public and the public are the police. I think you should know, Robert Peel was saying 18 something or another, and that's what we should be.
1839.
Thank you. Aiming to build on to further effectiveness.
Councillor Henning first, then Narji.
Yeah, no, I just thought you mentioned about getting the money back for the speeding. I mean, looking at our numbers, what was it? There was 190 speeding tickets issued 3 years ago. We're up to about 2,000 now, something like that. So, why doesn't the money from those fines go off to Finland? What the hell? Can this panel put together a missive to send off to the Home Secretary to say, come on, let's we work hard to do this, but we don't get any thanks.
Virtually every PCC in the country has signed a letter asking for the money back. And it was 1,324 tickets in my first year. Last year, it was over 16,000. So more than a tenfold increase. Don't speed in Wiltshire.
Right, Narji.
Thanks, Chair. Just really briefly, if they're obviously pending all these recommendations from members of the committee today, the plan obviously is we'll do to just make those final tweaks to get the document designed and then obviously published on our website. And we'll circulate that with panel members as well, so you can see that final published draft version of the annual report. Noting at the points around the partnership, and I think it was Councillor Hagg who just mentioned that piece. I think we've got an extensive range of partnerships, obviously set in legislation, but also as we actively work with all of our partners. And I suppose it's probably just a plea to happy to support and advise panel members where those exist, because there are key roles for councillors on many of those partnerships, and it may be we need to make sure we've got that really tightly aligned with members of the panel and our councillors, including portfolio holders and cabinet members of local authorities.
Councillor Hagg was just saying, although you say we've got all those partnerships, are we making them work?
About making them work rather than just having.
Yes, Councillor, and obviously we've got a presentation on the next item where you'll hear just about exactly how we are making that work.
Right, do we have some recommendation to close this agenda on? Or we're going to have Julie's drone and helicopter? And the specials. Add the special constables as well. Yeah?
Yeah.
So those three.
Is it, if you're going to publish it, is it worth a small section just in terms of the funding, just to start the recontracting and expectation management with the public, if this is going to be a public?
Do you want to put your mic on?
Oh, I'm so sorry. People don't usually listen. I was just wondering whether there's nothing. We're all listening. I know, that's I really sensitive to it. I just wondered if this is going to be a public document, given your thoughts earlier on funding, whether you start to take the opportunity to just put a tiny piece in around that so you can start recontracting and expectation management starts now in terms of where we're expecting a slight dip. I'm not sure what that would look like. We'll come back to an opportunity to look at this.
Yeah, so the panel will be happy for as it's proposed for final wording to be delegated to me in consultation with the chairman and the vice chairman, just to make sure it's all ironed out.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Can I have a proposer? Councillor Bucknell and
I'll second.
Councillor Williams. Chris.
Thank you.
Williams. Everybody agree on that?
Yeah,
It says I have to get it. Yeah, thank you. No, no one abstaining? No, that's it. Thank you very much. Agenda 10, Community Safety Partnership. To receive an update on community partnerships, including its future transformation, commissioning and grants. Chris Williams from Wiltshire, please, not be confused with Councillor Chris. Thank you.
Matt, Matt, you put in some slides up. How was I to do this?
Who's got the
Just
slide?
put him on now.
Yeah, oh no, oh, Vicky's just putting them up for you. Vicky, thanks, Vicky.
Right, yeah, so just to introduce myself, the other Chris Williams in the room. I am a community safety transformation lead at the Office of the Peace and Crime Commissioner, and I've been working with both the CSPs in Wiltshire and Swindon for the past 3 years, trying to move them on an improvement journey to help get to that point that you've all kind of touched on today. You've talked about youth justice, you talked about family hubs, you talked about domestic abuse, you talked about the justice system, probation. All of that kind of comes within the purview of the CSPs. And you made the point was about multi-agency working and where we're going with it. This is where our multi-agency working takes place, by and large, to support, in particular, those issues that are most relevant to communities. So the things that people talk about and complain about the most. Just to go to the next slide, please, Vicky. So community safety partnerships, I don't know if anybody has sat on them. Councillor Hadley, you might have done. Yes. I know that's the wrong side, but that's okay. That's somebody else's slides. But community safety partnerships have existed for a long time. They came out of the Crime and Disorder Act in 1998 and were established within 12 months of that across the country. These were called Crime and Disorder Reduction Partnerships, for those who've been around a long time. And there's one in every local authority area. Some of them are merged, but by and large, each local authority has a community safety partnership in place. So those of you, again, who've been in Wiltshire Council a long time, you will have had lots of community safety partnerships on what was called a county strategy group, so about 2008-9, and then it became the Wiltshire CSP. So they're made up of statutory partners, the police, the local authority, probation, health, you've lost us again there, and the fire service, fire and rescue service. In reality, they're dominated by the police and the local authority. Local authority do most of the convening, the police do most of the work. But probation, health and fire are equal partners, but because they often have different footprints, it's more challenging for them to get as involved as perhaps we'd like them to be. Certainly with probation, nationally, that's been an ongoing challenge to get probation to participate fully in CSPs, as we'd like. So the role of the CSPs is essentially to have a strategy to tackle crime and disorder being antisocial behaviour in an area. And the point really is that crime is too important to be left to the police alone. And we've all got a role to play in that. So that Crime and Disorder Act 1998, Section 17 of that Act puts an obligation on those 5 statutory partners to do everything they can to reduce crime and disorder in their area, to pay due regard to that responsibility. So the Community Safety Partnership needs to write an annual strategy, and that's based on an annual strategic assessment of risk, and that strategy sets priorities across the area. Some of those are given to us in legislation, so we have to have a strategy to reduce reoffending, we have to have one to reduce substance misuse, and we have to have one to reduce serious violence. But others are allowed to be chosen by the partnership based on local need, and we'll look at what our priorities are in a minute. Really important, and something that we often fall over, is that partners have the ability to share information, including personal information, across organisational boundaries to reduce crime for the purpose of prevention and detection of crime. And the legislation allows that to happen between members of the CSP. That is really important for us. All the things that you talked about today, we talked about, say, for example, victims of domestic abuse. social care are interested in those people just as much as police are interested in them, or housing are interested in them, or probation are interested in them. We need to be able to share information about vulnerable people in order to best design services to support them. Can I have the next slide, please, Vicky? So we have two strategies, one for Wiltshire and one for Swindon, and serendipitously, they have aligned their priorities. So if we go to the next slide, they've both structured themselves the same way, which is very helpful for agencies that work across those organisational or geographical boundaries. So each has three priorities: protecting vulnerable people, reducing harm, and safer communities. That breaks down into certain lines of work. So under protecting vulnerable people, that includes domestic abuse, but also exploitation. So exploitation includes child and adult criminal exploitation, and sexual exploitation as well. Reducing harm includes our work on serious violence duty, our statutory combating drugs partnership, and the work that we have to do under the Counter-Terrorism Security Act around preventing radicalisation. So how we have both partnered delivered and prevent duty. And the third piece, and very much the largest piece, is around safer communities. That covers kind of everything else. So antisocial behaviour, business crime, retail crime, rural crime, hate crime, road safety, and violence against women and girls, or BORG. There's an awful lot in there. And if you go to the next slide, you will hopefully see, I'll just try and explain how that works, because there's a lot of detail in that. So there's an executive board which sets the strategic direction. That is chaired by assistant chief constables at the force and has senior representation from all of those statutory partners. They agree the priorities and they hold them to account for delivering outcomes against those priorities. Beneath them, there's a set of other groups which all deliver all of those things. There's a domestic abuse partnership, there's a combat drugs partnership, a serious violence partnership, and so on and so forth. Beneath those, there is the actual work that takes place, and much of that work is through multi-agency panels. So if you've had to do domestic abuse, you might have heard of the MARAC, Multi-Agency Risk Assessment Conference. That is a case management process by which vulnerable victims of domestic abuse are discussed in a room much like this, and action plans to support those people are undertaken. We have the same approach for PREVENT, people who are vulnerable to being radicalised. We have the same approach for antisocial behaviour, vulnerable victims of antisocial behaviour, to what's called the ASBRAC, or in Swindon, our community MARAC, and so on and so forth. But we have lots and lots of operational multi-agency work in granular detail, working across organisational boundaries. Hopefully that will see in the next slide, which I've now remembered is after this one. That's Swindon's Community Safety Partnership. And as you can see, there's a lot going on in there. So if you go ahead to the next slide, Vicky, I'll just talk through how that works. So the Community Safety Partnership Executive might agree that antisocial behaviour is a priority for the partnership. And then they will, that's the next slide. It should be a whizzy change. They then delegate that responsibility to the Safer Communities Group, which then establish an antisocial behaviour strategic group which oversees the way that antisocial behaviour is delivered in Swindon. Beneath that, if you go to the next slide, we have three operational groups, a CPO panel, criminal behaviour orders, which looks at how we enforce legislation against prolific offenders of antisocial behaviour, a local joint action group which takes place-based problem-solving approaches. We've got a lot of work at the moment on Swindon Town Centre, for example, and the nighttime economy and issues that take place in there, and the community MARAC, which oversees work around vulnerable victims of antisocial behaviour and seeks to prevent that work being escalated, that harm being escalated. So the next slide. Oh, sorry, next one after that. Yeah. So I know you asked last time about the funding arrangements and how these things work. It's slightly different in both authorities. So in Wiltshire, and you may know this already, Wiltshire councillors, the SVPP, Safeguarding Vulnerable People's Partnership, works as part of Wiltshire Council, and that is the business support unit for the safeguarding boards and the Community Safety Partnership. And they get an annual budget of £298,500, which is made up of contributions from those 5 statutory partners. They are not equal contributions, but there is a contribution from everybody. That is how the Community Safety Partnership is funded in Wiltshire. That includes the cost of domestic abuse and domestic abuse related death reviews. So we have a statutory obligation to do the CSP to undertake an independent review of any homicide with a domestic abuse situation. That's quite an expensive thing. As you can see in Swindon, that they average that cost at £7,600 a year. They have 1 in Swindon a year on average and 2 a year in Wiltshire. That cost is entirely met through the SVPP arrangements. That's the only funding that comes in to Wiltshire. In Swindon, all the coordination for the partnership is undertaken by Swindon's Community Safety Team. There is no partner contributions to fund activity. Otherwise, these things happen on goodwill. They're a way of coordinating business as usual activity in a way that focuses work where the need is the greatest. It's not a case that these CSPs have commissioning budgets and are funding services. They are bringing services together that each agency already does. Occasionally, there will be grants from the Home Office, for example, around the Hotspot Action Fund, some of which can be given to the CSPs, who will then go and commission individual pieces of work, but there's generally small amounts of money. We've got about 50 or 60,000 this year to support problem solving work with the Joint Action Funds. Councillors?
No, good question on funding. So, if you just outline, so does this mean that Wiltshire Police contributes to Wiltshire CSP, even not to Swindon?
That's right. They contribute to the SVPP, but it's not just Wiltshire Police, it's for the safeguarding arrangements. They may well contribute to the safeguarding arrangements, Swindon Safeguarding Partnership. I don't know, because I'm not working.
It is for a lot of
but it's worth noting that that contribution mainly funds the work around the safeguarding boards, which is a much bigger piece of work than the CSP, and I think they still fund, David might know, this SSP, the Swindon Safeguarding Partnership for the Adults and Children's Safeguarding Board, but not into the CSP.
Yeah, I mean, definitely something worth looking at. Thank you so much for bringing.
So, Chris, that is exactly the reason. So again, the safeguarding was a contribution when it was set up by all partners originally, and Wiltshire Council decided to merge the support, the admin meeting support for that work. Hence why that there appears to be that budget. They've just used that money to sort of maximise efficiency in how they support the meeting. Wiltshire Council has a community safety team itself, as does Swindon. That is paid for by the councils in full. So I think actually we're probably not comparing exactly like with like. I'm pretty sure there is contributions from those partners to the safeguarding arrangements in Swindon.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, that's assumed the case. Just one other point on that. As you'll see around the domestic homicide review work, in Wiltshire, that contribution that everybody makes pays for the domestic homicide reviews. In Swindon, that's undertaken on an average basis. So the last domestic homicide review they had cost £7,600, and Swindon basically asked each one of the 5 statutory authorities for an equal contribution to fund that, which is their obligation to do so. And the final slide is just, I was asked about the relationship with the OPCC. So the Police and Crime Commissioner is not a statutory member of the CSP, but there is a statutory duty for the PCC's Police and Crime Plan to have due regard to the priorities of the Community Safety Partnership and vice versa. So the Community Safety Partnership strategies need to reflect how they're going to deliver the related elements of the Police and Crime Plan. So although there's not a statutory membership on the CSPs for the OPCC, it's a very clear joint working relationship, and it's pretty close, actually, I would say, in Wiltshire and Swindon. And obviously, as you've heard all morning, the PCC commissions that wide range of services which absolutely complement the objectives of the CSP. And the Commission talked about that. Councillor Williams was asking about the spend for the ODCC team. That's where that money goes on. Victim support, domestic violence advocates, sexual assault referral centres, etc. and so on. One thing that we do contribute is a community safety analyst. So we have a shared analyst for Wiltshire and Swindon who produces the strategic assessments, delivers our performance management for the community safety partnership, but also provides our tactical analysis, for example, in support of problem solving and joint work that needs to be taking place on the ground. So the OPCC are providing 54,000 a year to fund that post, and that is ring fence just to work on community safety partnership activity. Any questions? Councillor?
Yeah, thank you ever so much. That was an excellent presentation. Can I just ask one thing? I have got previous experience with community safety partnerships. In Hampshire, we had 14 community safety partnerships because it was a two-tier area. Therefore, local needs, local work, assessed through the local analysts, and as a result, we had a direct route from local communities through the local partnerships, because it was a two-tier area, into the community safety partnership. Of course, Wiltshire is not a two-tier area; it is a unitary authority. Swindon, it has its own, borough council, its own community safety partnership. We don't have that in Wiltshire. And what I'm wondering is that I think that leaves a deficit in terms of, I've asked people locally, what do we know? Have we been consulted? How do we input into community safety partnership? Like priority setting and therefore the police and crime plan, and no one really knows. And so I think that that's probably something that I would really like to address. And I'm wondering, having this discussion locally and coming up with some ideas, I'm wondering, Chris, whether we can have a discussion offline to share some ideas about what we're having to see how it could possibly fit in with the structures that you have.
I welcome that because it's been a challenge for Wiltshire probably since 2008.
Yes.
And the whole point of the community safety partnerships was to, as well as that strategic assessment to inform the strategy, there's an element of public consultation. What are the public priorities? That's really hard in Wiltshire because it's enormous.
Absolutely. One of the things since the attempts come in Wiltshire is they want to make great uses of the area boards, for instance. And if we could have some kind of arrangement at that geographical scale, that might make it a lot easier to kind of aggregate local information. And we have been discussing that with members of other parties as part of that area board about how we could input into the state budget. And that's the kind of thing that
I think that's really important. And I know that, in fairness, as Nigel says, Wiltshire have now got a dedicated community safety manager, community safety team, and those officers are dividing themselves on a regional basis, attending area boards and trying to get a grasp of what's happening locally. The other thing is, how do we deliver for communities in a broad geographic area? So in Salisbury, we set up a local joint action group to manage issues in the Salisbury area, and that's a process that's starting to be replicated around the county. Swindon is nice and easy, it's all compact and easy to get people around the table. Wiltshire is much harder, it's much more distant.
And what I wanted to kind of discuss is a bottom-up discussion about how we get local authorities aggregated, described and kind of manageable in terms of CSP's work, but also that top-down. And there's no criticism of anybody in terms of, because I know that there's a lot of effort made to kind of come and visit area boards, but it's to formalise that and how we can make that more productive.
Councillor Cotnell, please.
Yes, so as somebody who's been had a portfolio for area boards for quite a long time, I find it very disappointing that actually you've had all of this structure and you haven't had those deep and meaningful conversations. Because to me, this is an opportunity. It's the part of the missing link between the bit that we were talking about before we've had great consultations and visits from the PCC and the police themselves, but we've never actually had the community safety partnership knocking on the door of the area boards before now. When we've had all that structure in place, everybody's known about it, but we haven't really known enough about you and what you've done to actually join that up. So a little bit disappointed about that, and looking forward, hopefully, to joining those dots together and actually doing something going forward, because I think you've probably got a much bigger role to play than you're already doing in that education setting of, because the communities, very few people, fortunately, will experience what I a really devastating crime. It is the sort of the community-based crimes that people comment about. It's a rude thing. But it's the stuff that we get as councillors is all the irritation that people have on a day-to-day basis, and that's what you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So you really do have, in my view, a much better, much bigger part to play in the sort of community comms and engagement side of things than you currently have been, and we need to help you with that.
Chair, could I just clarify? Because I appreciate Councillor Bucknell's comments in terms of that progress. It's great, again, that encouragement around needing to do this community work. I mean, I think, as Chris pointed out, though, this isn't the responsibility of the Police and Crime Commissioner's office. This is very much that convening role and us supporting our partners to do that. Chris did just mention Wiltshire Council particularly did not have a community safety resource within its organisation for a number of years, which I think you're right. We're hopefully now seeing the real benefit of having that in terms of that link with local democracy, with area boards and other partners. So I think it's really important to recognise this is a partnership, and councillors around the table are part of that partnership to ensure that we are doing all we can as our individual agencies, but particularly as a local authority and the policing service as statutory partners, are putting enough resources into that to enable that to happen, because we know it's a collective effort. We know, you will know far more than most that there's numerous concerns around our local communities, and the only way we'll solve that is by using all the powers and tools that we've got together to do that. So I'm really positive that we're seeing this as a positive together, and I think we can continue to drive that forward. And coming back to Councillor Hagger's earlier comment, it is about how we make sure as partners we're getting the best out of each other, making sure we're using great information, and then coordinating our business as usual services as best as we possibly can, because that's what will reduce crime.
Thank you, Nalji. Councillor Hayden.
We had an area board sort of a brainstorming session the other day, and I did bring this up there briefly about looking at further work that the area boards can do. But I'm just thinking, I'm coming back to Chippenham and Cowan again. I hate to blow, well, no, I'd love to blow their trumpet. We've had a community safety forum in Cowan for many, many years. I chaired it for many, many years. And in Chippenham as well, which was rejuvenated a few years back. And that has been, we do try to use that as a place where members of the public can come and voice their concerns. It's slightly different in Chippenham and Cowan, but it's I think you might be getting an invitation to come to a safety forum and an area board near you very soon to build on this discussion and the desire to get a more of a flow.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. Councillor Wilson, quickly.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for this representation. It's really great. We touched base on challenges in Wiltshire. I would like to hear from you, through your particular lenses, what are the current challenges on the Swindon side in terms of the partnership, how we work together?
Frankly, how long have we got? Not long. Swindon's partnership is increasingly good. I do some work in Birmingham at the moment, and I constantly say to them, you are miles behind what Swindon are doing. Swindon are actually in a really good place. They've got a well-established partnership, they're evidence-led, they're trying to focus their resources on the highest need, be that vulnerable victims, vulnerable offenders, vulnerable locations. They're being evidence-led in the work that they're doing. The problem they have, as ever, and you've heard it all morning, is about resource, and they can't please as many people as they would like to do because they're having to focus on the kind of top tier of harm, which is a sensible approach, really, given the lack of resources they've got. They are finding it difficult, I think, to get into some of the endemic issues around serious and organised crime, for example, in Swindon, and taking multi-agency approaches to that and how that leads into exploitation. Some of that are challenges around information sharing, but we're kind of getting there with that. At least they're having that conversation. There's a lot of places on the country that aren't doing that. They're talking about antisocial behaviour all the time and not actually about the high harm. There's lots of good work going on around serious violence in Swindon, and knife crime in particular. We talked about Operation Blunt earlier, and the Wiltshire, sorry, and the things that we're doing to identify those young people who are most at risk of knife carrying and becoming victims of serious violence. That approach is really good in Swindon. It's streets ahead of what's happening in a lot of other places. Wiltshire are doing similar work as well around focused deterrence, and we've had some excellent results on that. We probably don't bang our drum loudly enough about the successes that we've had in the multi-agency space, because some of the work we're doing is cutting edge, I would say.
Just very quickly, of course, Swindon is doing really well, and that's why we had the Radio 4 programme here yesterday, in terms of how we are coordinating collectively in terms of addressing problems of young people. But I would just say, in many ways, this conversation is hypothetical because we do not know what the consequences, what the results of the English devolution bill is going to be. So we do not know how many levels of government there will be and what the boundaries are going to be. So it is very important and interesting to have this debate, but we could have to recast everything that we are doing in the future, depending on how devolution goes. For example, if Swindon goes north and Wiltshire goes south, how will that impact on what we are doing? I will leave it there because there's huge speculation on that, so I don't think there's any point discussing it at this stage.
Right.
Can Councillor Hammond quickly?
Yeah, no, it's just a request that you've mentioned the Radio 4 programme. Is that the Today programme? Was it, or is that, anyway, whatever it was, can you kind of let us know when that's going to be on? I don't, it might be on a podcast or something, you might be able to catch up on it, but I might miss it. I listen to Radio 4 a lot, but I might miss it. Is there some way that if we know when it's going to be broadcast, we get we know so that we can listen to it, or
I will find,
or whatever. Yeah.
I'll find out.
I don't want to miss it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, any good news is good news for everyone. And I'll certainly invite Chris again to come and give us the good news that Swindon's doing a good job on the partnership. Thank you very much. Right, we need to move on because time is pressing. We're a few minutes behind.
I know. It's,
Agenda 11, Commissioner's question time. So now you can quiz the Commissioner.
Well, that's what we've been doing.
Yeah. Well, you've got extra few minutes. If you want to use that, otherwise I will move on. Anybody want to use the opportunity to ask any questions to the Commissioner? If not, I'll be moving on. Anyone? Okay, Alex.
We had a meeting. I had a meeting with Juna when we were talking when I became vice chair, and there had been previous discussions, and I put a number of questions around how we're approaching domestic abuse to the Commissioner and to Najib. I just want to thank you, Najib, for your response. It was very interesting, but of course, like everything else, it leads to some more questions, and I just wondered whether it would be okay to share the questions and the responses with panel members, if there's anything that anyone wishes to raise in maybe a future agenda item.
very happy you shared that, because in many ways that was context for many of the questions that came up during this meeting.
It was, and I do get worried sometimes. I've been to a lot of meetings over the last few months, and every presentation I hear from everybody, the world is wonderful, you know what I mean? And because everyone's presenting what they're doing, and it's almost like heaven everywhere you go, because everything's brilliant. And, you know, there are real questions to answer around, you know, when the domestic abuse figures go up, you were very careful, and you caveated what you were saying, Catherine, about, you know, why are figures going up? Is it because people are more able to report? Is it because actually we are facing a real problem with an increase in domestic abuse? And it's about trying to know that, you know, the headline figures. And so for issues that where some, you know, where panel members, other people are interested, it's good to find a way of actually going deep on questions. And those questions to Najee, and thank you again, Najee, was a beginning to see how we can develop the conversation. So I will certainly share that, and perhaps we can discuss it at a future meeting. That's okay.
Nothing else? Sum that up. Just to say to the rest of the panel that you don't have to just, you know, have those questions just this panel meetings every 3 months, like Alan has done. If you can ask the questions to the Commissioner or the Chief Constable, that is, you know, if you need those questions answered. So please use the opportunities to contact the Office of the Commissioner or the Chief Constable if you've got burning questions you need answered. You don't have to wait 3 months for this panel. Chief Constable?
Thank you ever so much. So of course, absolutely echoing your point, but also I just wanted to remind everybody, if you're not signed up to the Community Messenger, please make sure that you do become signed up. So for example, the radio podcast that we were just talking about, that will be pushed out through the Commissioner's consulting team on Community Messenger, as well as on our website. That's also the place that you can pick up my bi-weekly public update to the Commissioner, and this week will be all about rural crime. It's been a rural crime proactive week. So please, if people aren't on Community Messenger, please make sure you'll also get the dates of our Facebook Live sessions, and we also have a Facebook page from a force perspective and the Commissioner's perspective, and we also have an Instagram account. So again, Chair, it's just to highlight to people where they can be updated with what's going on, but also then they can have a direct opportunity to ask us questions.
Thank you very much for that, Chief Constable. Right, there's no further questions of Commissioner. Move on. Okay. Agenda 12, a forward work plan, which is on page 47-48. To note the forward work plan. So in the next meetings, we should be having the panel to receive an update about retail crime at our next meeting. The focus of the January and February meeting will be then on the midterm financial strategy and precept. And if members have any suggestions about topics they might like to look at in the future. And the final bit is, as Councillor Hager said, regarding the questions and answers for the domestic abuse. Councillor Hager will forward that to the rest of the panels to see that. So do members have any suggestion about any other topics apart from the work plan? No?
I really would like, I'm very interested to know more about the specials. We said we would have a report somewhere about the specials and the specialist skills they're bringing. I'd like some kind of analysis of that. Is that possible? Sure. Because they might be drone drivers.
The drone team has got a significant number of pilots in it. And one of our drone pilots has just won a national award because he runs his own IT company, and he has developed a little widget you can put on a drone, which will allow you to locate mobile phones as long as the Wi-Fi is on and pinging, which means you don't need helicopters any longer to find missing persons, because we've got our own drone that we've got this widget we can put on any of our bigger drones. So there are some fantastic things. The protest in Swindon Town Centre 2 weekends ago, we had a whole drone team up here. We had permanent overview of what was happening in the town, and they were in the car park next door, and I sat and watched exactly was what was happening. We had drones continually over it. And of course, that allows us to see what's going on, time spent on recce, time never wasted, and deploy the appropriate responses where they are needed in a timely fashion. Sorry, one of my pet subjects.
So can we put it in a future work programme so you can update us and brief us on?
Of course.
Okay.
Thank you.
Chair, if I may, just to remind again, members, obviously new members, obviously the January and February meetings are solely about the budget and the precepts. So obviously the March meeting is the last one of the municipal year. I'm happy, of course, we've got into the habit, but this was the previous chair, so again, happy to talk to you about it, Chair, to bring all those ideas together for sort of an idea of, sort of a work plan, so you can identify what presentations you want throughout the year, because obviously that just supports us to make sure you're getting the top quality presentations and the right people are scheduled throughout. So again, if you want an expansive conversation about things like specials, we can probably do it in that route as well. So probably just guided by on how much detail you want on which topics, but we can provide that report either in November if you'd find that interesting. I can bring that forward, or do that for March.
Thanks, Nad. We'll discuss that our next agenda meeting settings with you. Thank you. Agenda 13, panel communications with the public, to consider how the panel can improve its communications with the public. Detail about the process of making a complaint about the PCC has been presented in a more accessible format on Wiltshire Council website, for example, so it's compatible with the latest guidance. Anybody have any suggestions how panel communicates with the public?
Sorry, been bigger than a newcomer. Do you mean this panel?
Yes.
Are you trying to get minutes out there or whatever, or have a sort of conversation with them, do some consultation? Because I think we get swamped with too much consultation and asking things. We get it from the police, we get it from the PCC, and it's very welcome. Safety side of it as well. But there's only so much people can take on consultations at the moment. Sorry, just my observation.
Well, my point would be is, as panel members, how are we communicating what the panel does and how the panel holds the commissioner to account? Because a lot of people, if you ask a lot of residents, they don't know what the PCC, Police and Crime Panel does and who's on it and who are the members representing Swindon and Wiltshire. So that's just a wake-up call in itself.
Yeah, but that surely applies to a lot of committees and panels and that, which both authorities have. The man on the street doesn't really know. And I'm sorry, I've been a bit negative here, but as long as they get a bit said, you can this, that, and the other, that's all really interesting.
Okay, anyone? Councillor Hennig.
Yeah, I mean, with this meeting is broadcast, isn't it? I mean, it is. Is it broadcast live?
No.
Yes, it is. So it is live. So, and I do find that the press, they don't turn up at meetings. Very rarely turn up at meetings. They just watch the live stream and get stories out. So, I wonder why perhaps they're not taking an interest. It's not. They're not. We're dull. We've got maybe something really controversial.
Talk about yourself.
Yeah.
Right, I've just asked Vicky, and there's 5 people watching us on YouTube live. They might watch later. Councillor Asper.
Yeah, just come back on that point. Obviously, prior to 2012, the Police and Crime Panel would be doing a role of what is now the Police and Crime Commissioner. That would be our role. Now, I can understand that since the Police and Crime Commissioner's post has come in place, our role has switched only to keeping an eye on the Police and Crime Commissioner, as I understand it, unless I've been completely misbriefed.
Well, it used to be the police authority, which used to hold the chief constable to account, and now the commissioner holds the chief constable to account, and the management, day-to-day management of the police force, we hold the commissioner to account for holding the chief constable. So there's a 3 tier now.
Yeah.
So it has and hasn't switched role. It's the commissioners in the middle now doing the.
Chair, if I may, I think just in terms of ultimate clarity, obviously the PCs are directly elected by the community, so that's the most significant change from a police authority, which is, of course, nominated councillors and co-opted members. So obviously the government brought in the legislation and argued that that was a better democratic accountability with direct elected PCCs, and of course to enable any directed elected official, there is an element of scrutiny and challenge and support, which of course this panel provides. I think it's also probably important to note that the police authority had about 25% of the responsibilities that the PCC holds in terms of that wider system leadership, responsibility for budgets and for appointment and scrutiny of the force and the police complaint system and the justice sector. So there's the kernel, as you said, is that is a bit of the briefing, but actually it's a bit more nuanced and wider than that.
I couldn't explain better than that now. Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Butt.
Yes, I think the very obviously the PCC, OPCC, the commissioner, they all have their own methods of communication. I think as a committee or a panel, the very least we can do is that after each meeting is to actually say, we met on this day, we discussed these topics, and here's where you find the minutes of the meeting, and that's the absolute bare minimum we should do as a result of this. And that should go out through social media.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I was going to say what Nigel said, but we have a responsibility to go back to whoever we're representing on this panel, don't we? And kind of like say to them what has happened, what the work of the Police and Crime Commissioner and the Constabulary and the police is, and also to the other groups that we're a part of. We have an individual responsibility to do that.
Okay, thank you. Time pressing. Agenda 14, future meeting dates. Is just to note the future meeting dates are on the agenda pack. So the next meeting will be here again on the 25th of November at later time of 10:30. And then in January, we have got Town Hall in Trowbridge, Kennet Room, and in February in Chippenham, in Moulton Park. So those are our future dates. Right. Agenda 15. This is where I need to ask exclusion of press and public to consider as following resolution. Reading that. To agree with accordance with section.
Chair, can I just confirm that the live stream has been stopped because, of course, this is under part 2. So if I could just confirm that is the case.
No, not as yet, because you need to pass the resolution.
Yeah, I need to pass this resolution.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. Sorry, forgive me.
To agree in accordance with section 100A, 4 of the Local Government Act 1972 to exclude the public from the meeting for the business specified in item 14, it is likely that if members of the public were present, there would be a disclosure to them of exempt information as defined in paragraph 1 of part 1 of Schedule 12A to the Act, and the public interest in withholding the information outweighs the public interest in disclosing information to the public. So can I get a proposal, please?
Propose.
Councillor Bucknell and seconder, Councillor Munro. Thank you very much.